Skeletons of the Marital Closet by Tang. Chapter 1421. If you want me to produce evidence, I can send people to collect it right away. When Heather heard this, she held herself back. She was powerless. How could she fight? That's not what I meant. Don't misunderstand me. Heather smiled. Now is not the time to settle accounts. It is time to save lives. If your father is gone, can you live with yourself? Gale pulled out her chair and sat down, looking calm. He doesn't treat me as a daughter. Why should I treat him as a father? In his heart, he only recognizes Natalie. He didn't want me as a daughter back then. It was my mother who insisted on having me, Gale said. Heather shook her head. No way. How is it possible? Matthew is not this kind of person. How can what he said personally in front of me yesterday be false? Oh, you really have the heart to do nothing to save him? This is your dad. Your real dad. He and I are only related by blood, not feelings. Heather rolled her eyes and thought rapidly. Matthew had completely collapsed. Not even Aram could help Natalie, and there was no way she, a woman, could do anything. So, could she escape unscathed? Should she leave? With Heather's age, appearance, and ability to seduce men, she should be able to find another fool of a man and live peacefully for the rest of her life. Gale looked at Heather and found it funny. She had already guessed what Heather was thinking. The worst-case scenario for her would be to abandon her lover and daughter. She should just save herself. Sure enough, Heather said, Gale, if you are really so cruel, there's nothing I can do. I have no money and power, so the only thing I can do is to take care of him at the bedside. Oh, are you planning to ignore him? Don't you even care about the friendship you have had with him for so many years? Heather, he is your old friend. Even as a daughter, you don't care for him. I am merely his lover. How can I care more than you? Gale clicked her tongue twice and shook her head. I wonder what Matthew's expression would be like when he heard this. He loved Heather so much. He spent money to support her for so many years, and he did not abandon her even if something happened. As a result, as soon as he fell, Heather was thinking about how to run away. He and I are not related. How long can he be sad? But it is his biological daughter who is willing to die without saving him, which could be the most heartbreaking to him. You are wrong. Gale shook her head. In Matthew's heart, you are much more important. Yesterday at Aram's house, do you know what he said after you were dragged out? Heather asked. What? Had Matthew blamed her? Were the two of them really just going to break apart when disaster struck? Chapter 1422. He said that he didn't want anything more. He wants a divorce and he will leave us the house. He only had one request, and that was to take you and Natalie out of Sioux City and never appear in front of me again. He wants to live a happy life with you. Heather was stunned and turned her head stiffly to look at the unconscious Matthew. Had he really said that? He still wanted to take her away with him? You treat him as a cash machine, but he treats you as your true love. Gale clicked her tongue twice. I have to say, Heather, you are still very good at toying with men. At such a moment, Matthew still cares about you and considers you in his future. Heather gritted her teeth. But he can't even protect himself now. What's more, if you don't want to let Natalie go, how can he take her away? He can take you away. We are old and unemployed. How should we fend ourselves? Do you mean for us to beg for money? Heather has been cared for and pampered by Matthew. She never worked. She only spent money, had fun, and took care of herself. Gale glanced at her deliberately. Actually, I can give you a sum of money to let you go. Heather's eyes lit up. However, don't think about taking Natalie away. She will never escape from my hands and see any hope of a new life. But I can make it happen for you and Matthew, Gale said. Really? After all, you are right. He is my father. If he died like this because he had no money for surgery, everyone would tell me that I am cruel and don't care about my family. Yes, yes, Heather immediately nodded in agreement. No matter how bad he is still your father. What Gale disliked the most was that sentence. Manipulating others over blood ties. Could it be that if a person makes a mistake, he can be forgiven by just saying he is your father? However, she was too lazy to tell Heather this. She was saying all these things for a reason. But I have conditions. Gale looked at Heather. I won't grant you freedom for nothing. If you comply, I'll even give you money. What conditions? You tell me, as long as I can do it. Heather was cornered and had no right to negotiate terms. If Gale was willing to give her away, she was willing to take it. There were still decades to come. Who knew what would happen in the future? Maybe she would have a chance to turn it all around. That was what she told Natalie too. Gale stood up and looked at Heather. She slowly approached. I have always suspected one thing, and that is why I suddenly disappeared back then. Heather stepped back, panicked and evasive. But she did not dare to look at Gale. Heather said, How would I know? Well, it must be that Mary failed to take good care of you, so you were lost. I won't beat around the bush. Heather, is my disappearance related to you? As soon as she finished speaking, Heather immediately denied it. It's not me. Chapter 1423. She was too quick to answer. You don't admit it. Gale narrowed her eyes. Do you still want the money and leave City with Matthew? I think so, but I can't just take the blame for such a big crime. Whether you are taking the blame or you are the one who did it, Heather, you know best in your heart. Heather's legs were a little weak and she could not stand firmly. She retreated to the end of the hospital bed and reached out to grab the railing before she managed to stand upright. She swallowed her saliva. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything. You can't accuse me of this. Besides, if I admit it, will you let me go? You will definitely put me in jail. Gale suddenly laughed. If you admit it, I will really let you go. Because if I had grown up in the Yarn family, how would I have had the chance to meet Shawn and become Mrs. Wood? I am so glorious and powerful now. Which woman in the whole city can marry as well as me? Heather stopped talking and just glanced at her secretly several times. Was that Gale said true or false? It sounded reasonable, but Heather suspected it was a trap. She did not dare to jump right into it. You can't say that. Aram is also a good man, Heather replied. Can Aram be compared with Shawn? The Wood family is the most wealthy family in town, and Shawn is the CEO of the Wood Group, worth hundreds of billions. What about Aram? The market value of Lefting Group is only a third of that. Heather was about to speak when her eyes suddenly saw a figure flashing past the door of the ward. It seemed like someone was coming. She swallowed her words immediately. Gale, with her back to the door, did not notice it at all. So you care about status so much. If Orm heard what you said, he would be so sad. He has been looking for you everywhere for so many years, and he still wants to marry you. It turns out you dislike him for not being as rich as Mr. Wood, Heather said. Gale wanted to speed up the conversation. She nodded. Yes, I am a superficial woman. Who doesn't like money? Don't you also like Matthew's money? You have followed him for so many years without any name or distinction. Heather,
I just want an answer today. Back then, was it you who abducted me when I was young? It's really not me. It's something I didn't do. Are you sure? As long as you tell the truth, I will pay the medical fee by swiping my card now, arrange surgery for Matthew, and then give you a sum of money to ensure that you have a pension. Heather was a little moved. However, she did not know whether Gale really planned to do this or was deliberately trying to trick her, just in case. What if she admitted it and it turned out worse than expected? Are you going to tell me? You can't hide it forever. Shawn is already conducting a thorough investigation. Once he finds the evidence and names you as the person who did it, you don't need me to tell you. You already know what I'll have lying in wait for you, Gale asked again. Heather hesitated. I didn't do it. How can I be so capable? Your disappearance has nothing to do with me. Heather almost knelt down in front of Gale. Gale did not believe her. Who else could it be besides you? Could it be Matthew? Matthew also denied it. Was he so cruel that he would abduct his daughter and abandon her just to take Natalie into the Yarn family? Chapter 1424. An idea flashed in Gale's mind. Did you and Matthew work together? Did you team up to abduct me? Heather lowered her head and hesitated. Back then, she was still thinking about it. It was possible to get the money, leave City with Matthew, and be settled forever. If she denied it, Shawn was so capable that he would most likely find the evidence. Heather was at odds with herself. She gritted her teeth, closed her eyes, and said directly, What happened when you disappeared? Suddenly, at that moment, the door opened. Gale and Heather both looked up. They saw Aram standing at the door, his hands hanging by his sides, his face haggard, his eyes bloodshot, and his face expressionless. As soon as Heather saw him, she ran over quickly. Aram, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Aram, what should I do? Matthew's heart is failing. I don't have the money to put up a stand for him. Gale refuses to pay and threatens me in various ways. What should I do? You have been helping from the beginning to end. His daughter has completely given up on him. Heather burst into tears as if someone had bullied her. Aram ignored her and just looked at Gale. Come out for a moment. Okay. Heather pulled him. Aram, what should I do? I will pay for all his expenses in the hospital. Heather was overjoyed. Thank you, Aram. You are so kind. As she spoke, she deliberately glanced at Gale. With Aram here, she had nothing to worry about. Gale said nothing and walked straight out. Aram and Gale stood face to face in the corridor. You didn't sleep all night last night, right? You don't need to get involved in the Yarn's family's affairs, Gale asked. Gale, do you think I'm just being a busybody? Gale did not expect Aram to ask such a question and was stunned for a moment. His tone was a bit off, a bit rushed, and different from his usual personal image. I didn't mean that. I can understand you helping Natalie, but Matthew and Heather are not worthy, she explained softly. Aram smiled mockingly. Yes, you don't care about your biological father, so why should I, an outsider, interfere? I didn't consider you an outsider. Gale, to you, Uncle Yarn is not a good father, but to me, he has helped me a lot. Aram appreciated Matthew. Therefore, in the business world, he took care of Aram. When he had connections and resources, the first person he thought of was Aram, who offered him all kinds of support and training. As the saying goes, family comes first. In Matthew's heart, Aram was his future son-in-law. He had long regarded Aram as one of his own, and he would think of Aram whenever he got any benefit. Chapter 1425. Everyone in C City knew this, so they had high opinions of Aram. Along the way, Matthew was kind to him. Therefore, Aram would not sit idly by. Gale nodded. Okay, I understand. You have your feelings, and I have my principles. Gale, what are your principles? If someone doesn't offend you, you won't offend them. If someone offends you, you will offend them? Aram asked. Yes. Aram looked at her. So, in the entire Yarn family, you only care about Mary's opinions and feelings. Everyone else has hurt you, and you have to take revenge. Yes, my mother is the only one who truly loves me, considers me, and has never done anything to hurt me. Matthew cheated on his wife, betrayed his marriage, and supported a mistress. Not to mention Natalie, she did not deserve forgiveness at all. Heather was an outsider. In the entire Yarn family, only Mary was the victim and the only one who stood by Gale. But Matthew is your father. After he was sent to the hospital in a coma yesterday, he was found to have a heart problem and needs help. Can you really do nothing to save him? Gale asked softly. Are you educating me? I just think you are strange and what? Just tell me. Aram closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were full of disappointment. Gale, I see the shadow of Shawn in you now. You have become as cold-blooded, as ruthless and selfish as him. The Gale I knew before is gone. He felt Gale was strange. He almost did not recognize her. Gale bit her lip slightly and then she smiled. Maybe you have never really known me. Aram, kindness should be a strength, not a weakness. As long as Matthew had a little bit of kindness for me, I won't treat him this way, Gale said. Instead of people bullying and hurting her, she endured it silently, repaying evil with kindness. She was gentle but not to be crossed. Aram replied, Matthew did many wrong things when he was young. You can hate him, blame him, and settle accounts with him. But now that he is so seriously ill, can you still bear it? When he was with Heather, did he ever think about my mother's feelings? How could he bear it? He sent Natalie to the Yarn family to be raised by his side and deceived my mother. How could he bear it? He said that I shouldn't have been born. How can I bear it? Matthew really did all those hateful things. However, Gale was not a softie. She just wanted to take advantage of Matthew's lack of hospital funds to force Heather to reveal the truth about her disappearance at a young age. Regardless of whether Heather admitted it or not, or whether she got the answer she wanted, she would pay the hospital bills silently afterward. Just like Aram said, Gale was the shadow of Shawn. Many of things were only done, not said, and did not need people to understand or see them. Gale hated Matthew because he destroyed the whole family, but she did not want him to die. No matter how much Gale pretended not to care, she would do the right thing. It was a pity that Aram did not understand. The person who understood was Shawn. He would see through Gale's pretense. He would hold her in his arms, comfort her softly, and kiss away her tears when she dreamed about Matthew at midnight. Chapter 1426. Aram said, Although I don't support or agree with it, I can understand it. You hate the Yarn family. You refuse to forgive Natalie and help Matthew. So, Gale, what do you think of me now? He looked straight into Gale's eyes without blinking. Me, of you? Well, from the time we met until now, I haven't done anything to hurt you, right? In your heart, do you regard me as deserving of your kindness? Aram said. Gale nodded. Aram laughed. Don't lie to me, Gale. She was puzzled. I lied to you? I stood at the door of the ward for a long time. I heard a lot of the conversation between you and Heather, including that sentence you said I can compare with Shawn. My company is not good as his, Aram said. Gale was a little surprised. He was at the door of the ward, but he never came in. Gale, this is what you believe? So in your heart, I am just a spare tire who is far inferior to Shawn? Aram asked. Gale felt a sense of powerlessness all over her body. I said it, but I only said it to Heather on purpose. It does not represent my true thoughts, she explained. Why are you telling Heather this? Gale looked at him. Because I suspect that my disappearance back then was related to Heather, and she abducted me. So I want to trick her. Aram, that's the way it is. I have never looked down on you. When I was at my lowest, most embarrassed and helpless, you were always by my side. I will always remember that I owe you so much, and I can't even think about where to start to repay you. How could I despise you? On the contrary, I am most grateful that you have never despised me in these years. In Gale's heart, Aram was a special person. How special? If something happened to Aram, she would help him at any cost and with everything she had. She was willing to do it without any hesitation. Aram just looked at her quietly. He did not speak, but he looked so lonely. At this moment, there seemed to be a barrier between the two people, separating them. In the corridor, nurses walked back and forth occasionally, but it was still quiet. Gale also wanted to take this opportunity to make something clear. She took a deep breath and said, Aram, without you, there would be no me today. It was you who saved me from the operating table and took me away to raise my children. It was you who helped me jump into the sea and feign death. I had Joshua and Nicole. It was you who took care of my dad during the 4 years I left town. It was you who arranged for Zoe to be by my side, to take care of me during confinement and take care of the children. When I was most hopeless, it was you who extended a helping hand to me. I am very grateful to you. But Aram, I am only grateful. She raised her eyes and looked at him. Do you understand? Aram's eyes were a little evasive, but Gale was looking steadily. He looked shifty. Aram finally met her eyes. Are you drawing a line with me now? I just want to make something clear, putting aside what has happened over the years. Gale, don't you care at all about our little moments when you were young? At that time, it was just us, without Shawn. You were little Miss Yarn and I was your beloved Aram from next door, Aram asked. Those childhood memories have always been sealed in Aram's mind. Chapter 1427. Memories and nostalgia from time to time. Aram, I don't even remember, Gale replied. His body shook. You don't remember at all? Yes, I have no impression at all. My earliest memory is in the Warm family. You forgot. It turns out that you have forgotten everything and have no memory, Aram murmured softly. He was the one who had been nostalgic and clinging to the past. Aram cherished those childhood memories so much, but to Gale, they meant nothing. We were very young at that time. Aram, everyone has to look to the future, not the past, Gale replied. Yes, I am the only one who stays in the past and keeps those few promises. I never thought that those were mere childish words. Aram said that he wanted to marry her, and only her, from the bottom of his heart. He remembered it all his life. He wanted to make that wish come true. So, how excited he was when he knew that Gale was the daughter of the Yarn family he was looking for. What a joy! Before he knew Gale's life experience, Aram had been desperately suppressing his emotions. He never allowed himself to fall in love with other women. Unexpectedly, he fell in love with the same person he had always said he wanted to marry since childhood. What a wonderful fate! But what? Gale did not love him. I will do whatever I promised to. From that moment on, I have identified my future wife. The only person I want to marry is the daughter of the Yarn family. Aram slowly clasped his hands. Gale was the real daughter of the Yarn family. She was the love of his life. But Gale, it turned out that I was the only one who honored that promise. She was already gone. She had rejected him. Aram, have you ever thought that maybe what you love is not me, but just a memory or a feeling when you were young? How can you understand what love is at such a young age? Gale asked. He gave a wry smile. You don't have to find such excuses to reject me. What I love is you, not feelings or memories. I loved you before, I love you now, and I will only love you in the future. It's a pity that from now on, you will never love me again, Gale asked. Then, Arum, what do you love about me? The only interaction he had with her was during their childhood years. She was young and ignorant, and she had forgotten all about it. When they met again later, Arum did not know her true life experience and was engaged to Natalie. She had already married Shawn. How could love arise when two people have partners of their own? I love you because you are you. You are the person I promised to marry when I was a child. You are the person I have been looking for so many years, Aram said. Chapter 1428. Then what you love is my identity, not my person. Gale sighed softly. If another person was born in the Yarn family and became the daughter of the Yarn family, you would love her too. Aram was startled for a moment, then said in disappointment, Gale, why do you deny my love so much? He has held on to this relationship for so long, taking up a quarter of his life. I'm just expressing my true feelings. You said you love me and will only marry me because I am the daughter of the Yarn family, your childhood playmate, and the person you promised to marry. Gale remembered that she also asked Shawn what he loved about her. Although Shawn was not good at expressing emotions and was a man of few words and aloof, he did tell the reason why he loved her. He told her why he was moved because of her strength in trying to survive in desperate situations, because of her determination not to give up or give up, because she was brave enough to be herself, because Shawn saw her attitude toward life. This was Shawn's answer, and Gale always remembered it. She asked Aram why he loved her, and Aram only said over and over again that it was because she was the person he wanted to marry when he was a child. I can't go back, Aram. It was God's will that I got lost from the Yarn family and disappeared for more than 20 years. Our fate has been broken since then. We can be lifelong friends, even relatives, but we cannot be lovers. She made it clear. She knew that Aram loved her before, but she had been dodging and avoiding it, not knowing how to face it. Now she realized that escaping was not the answer. She wanted to clear it up once and for all. Gale still wanted Aram as her friend. He was also a very important person in her life. Gale, you have rejected me again and again. You have rejected my request to let Natalie go. Now, you have rejected my love again. The red bloodshot eyes of Aram were particularly obvious. Too many things have happened in this time, Aram, and I have never found a chance to explain it clearly to you. So today, let's just clarify it, Aram asked. From the beginning to the end, you only loved Shawn, right? Apart from him, you can no longer hold anyone in your heart. Gale admitted, yes, I love him. Even though he did so many things that hurt you in the past? Gale, have you forgotten the reason why you jumped into the sea and faked your death. How did Shawn treat you? I didn't forget. Aram interrupted her. No, you just forgot. Aren't you afraid that Shawn will bruise you all over again? Do you want to experience those pains again? Gale replied. Shawn is not the same person he used to be. He has changed a lot. Although he was still strong, he cared more about her feelings. He was still cold and ruthless, but he left all his softness to her. Gale could see Shawn's changes bit by bit. Sure enough, the person who is favored doesn't need to do anything. As long as he stands there, he can get all the love. Aram smiled, full of ridicule and desolation. I just had a feeling. If you take Nicole back to Sea City, you will never leave again. Chapter 1429. You are reluctant to let go of Shawn. You love him, and Shawn will not let you go easily. You have his children and feelings for him. He grew white hair for you overnight, and he never married anyone else for the rest of his life. I know what he has done for you. Later, I obviously guessed that you two would reconcile, but I still supported you when you brought Nicole back because I hoped she would recover and because I love you too. I can't bear seeing you sad all day because of her condition. So, when you were taking Nicole for treatment, I took it upon myself to bring Joshua here, let him stay with my family. That way, it would be very convenient for you to see him. But I have done so much. What have I gained? I got a sentence saying that you are grateful to me. No matter how calm Aram was, no matter how personable, gentle, and elegant, his emotions were still difficult to control at this moment. After loving for so long and giving so much, he failed miserably. He was the worst loser. His childhood promise was rewarded by Gale for getting him. His help over the years earned him the words, I can't be your lover. Aram had been waiting, always holding on to that glimmer of hope. He thought that after he had done so much, Gale would eventually see, she would care, be soft-hearted, and be moved. She would return to him, renew her childhood promise, and become his Mrs. Lefting. The results of it? Gale still loved Shawn. She loved Shawn, who threw her into a mental hospital, aborted her child, and ruined her family. Gale was a little at a loss. She had never seen Aram so out of control. In her impression, Aram was always a gentleman, elegant, and treated everyone with a smile. His appearance at this time was very strange. I didn't expect that you loved me. Gale looked at him. Her voice was very soft, for fear of stimulating his emotions again. When we met, when you helped me, I've always been with Shawn and I'm his wife. You have always been engaged to Natalie. You also told me that you would marry Natalie and only let her be your wife. So, Aram, I tacitly agree with you that our relationship is that of friendship, friends who will support and help you throughout our lives. Aram asked, what happens after Natalie and I break off our engagement? What happens after you know that you are the real daughter of the Yorn family? You should know then I loved you, right? Aram, it was at the time that I realized you loved me. Right. It's too late. It's too late. Gale lowered her eyes. I didn't know what to tell you at that time, nor how to start this topic, so I kept putting it off, planning to wait until the Yarn family's affairs were settled. She put it off. Shawn thought she loved Aram, and Aram thought that she would leave Shawn. Gale never thought about swinging between two men. Her heart, her affection, the truth was that she clearly knew which person it should be given to. There was no choice. Aram sighed. It turns out that you knew that I loved you, but you didn't respond to me for a long time because you didn't know how to reject me. But I thought you were acquiescing and being shy. He was so sentimental. Chapter 1430. Arum, you can't force love. I can tell you I'm sorry for hurting you, Gale said. How should she apologize for not loving someone? I'm sorry for not loving you? How ridiculous it sounded. Arum suddenly turned around, his back facing Gale. He raised his head slightly, his Adam's apple rolling up and down. Only now I can truly understand what Natalie felt. Arum clasped his hands behind his back showing a sense of loneliness. Is this tit for tat? Natalie loves me so much, but I don't love her. I love you so much, but you have never considered loving me. What irony! Arum never understood why Natalie was so obsessed with him. Now that he had experienced it himself, he finally understood. If you identify a person you love, you only want to be with that person. Gale hesitated for a moment and then said, although I think it's ugly to say this, I still want to tell you, Arum, how you feel about Natalie is how I feel about you. The only difference is that you won't do evil things like Natalie did. Therefore, there will be no hatred between us, and there will be no insurmountable barriers. We can live in peace for the rest of our lives. Before Gale finished speaking, she was interrupted by Arum. Gale, what if I did something as vicious as Natalie? She was startled. What did he mean? Not getting love turns out to be really painful and torturous. Arum laughed. When I don't get it, I want to destroy it all. Arum! She saw Arum walking forward quickly without looking back. No matter how loud Gale called him, he just pretended not to hear. Gale watched helplessly as he left and disappeared from sight. She said to herself, I have carefully used the right words to reject Arum and make this feeling clear, but it still hurts him. No matter how perfect and nice a rejection was, it was a sharp knife after all, and it still would hurt. However, Gale still had to say it. She did not want Arum to misunderstand, nor did she want Arum to wait for her with a glimmer of hope. Arum had made it clear here, but she still had to go to Shawn to explain it clearly. She wanted to explain to Shawn that she said she loved Arum deliberately, to anger him and lie to him. She did not know how Shawn would react. It should not be a big problem. After all, he had always been the one she firmly chose. However, Gale also had to explain that Joshua was his son. Why she had to hide him. Just thinking about it made her dizzy. Gale turned around and returned to the ward. When she opened the door, Heather was standing behind the door. As the door slammed on her, she took a few steps back and covered her forehead. Are you eavesdropping? Her face darkened. No, you are all at the end of the corridor, near the window. How can I hear you? Heather said. Heather stood on tiptoes and looked out. Where's Arum? Is he gone? Yes. Then have the fees been paid? Gale glanced at her coldly. Heather, you'd better stay in the ward. Take good care of Matthew and don't have any evil intentions. If you do it right, you don't need to worry about money. The nurse comes every now and then to urge for payment. How can I cope with it? She won't.